Hi there, and welcome to another episode of 411 Pop Culture, where real people talk about really everything. I'm Justin, this is Danielle, and tonight we are going to do another VC Andrews theory video. We wanted to get one out because the holidays are coming up and we're both going to be busy. So we thought we would tackle one that we had to put a little bit of extra research in, go back and reread this script, go back and rewatch these movies just to make sure. But this is one that we've wanted to do for a while. We always appreciate all the comments out there. It helps us know we're on the right track because we still have plenty on the list, and I'm seeing comments on ones that we've had on the list for a while. They're coming, but it's good to know that you still want to see them all. It helps us know that you're enjoying this content. But how you doing today, Danielle?
I'm doing well.
Good. Well, we'll jump right in. This episode is going to be focused on the infamous Wes Craven script in correlation to the 1987 Flowers in the Attic, which we are big fans of. We love Flowers in the Attic. Yeah. Now, this script has been sort of out there. It's been on the internet. It's been available. It's been in theories or fans have wanted to see forever. This goes back, I remember in the 90s when I first got on the internet, and we had back there web TV I was using and everything, and I would look up like the complete BC Andrews website, which is no longer in existence. I think it's archived. But it was always a discussion, and it seemed to me that for the most part, fans were always like, this would have been the way to go. Wes Craven's script was amazing. His take on the Flowers in the Attic movie was the way to go. But what we're here to discuss, was it? So Danielle just read the script like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
We rewatched a movie that we think is going to be in relation to this topic. But I will say that, Wes Craven's script, there's definitely things about it that I enjoy. There are also things that I think are very problematic, and we'll see if whether we think that really it would have been better than the movie we got. Now, the big problem is that VC Andrews, when trying to put her or market her in a certain genre, they always kind of struggled with that. I think that horror kind of always came to the forefront, but really VC Andrews is sort of her own genre. It's a mix of Southern Gothic, dark fairy tale, horror, the children in danger sort of thing. But I think that, even if you look at the marketing to the released film that we got, it very much was horror, was the main way to kind of market it. And I remember going to like the video store before I had ever seen it, before I ever read BC Andrews. I remember seeing it in the horror section. And if you look at the back cover, it's very scary. Wes Craven, who I will say, I love Wes Craven. I grew up on Nightmare on Elm Street. I love Scream. You loved all that too, right? Yeah. I really respect and love Wes Craven. I was very sad when he passed away. I think he was a genius. But do I think that he was necessarily right to do Flowers in the Attic?
No.
Now, we'll jump right into it. But clearly, I could understand the motivation. If they were going to make a horror movie, why not have Wes Craven do it? But we kind of read the script, and I found things problematic with it for the first time I read it. The big thing that I think most people respond to is the fact that the brother-sister relationship is in there. I think his script does do it in a way too that would work considering like the time frame that they're up there, because it's the same as, the 1987 version we got. It's about a year that they're up there, it seems like. And it's weird, we kind of talked about it, but it seems like Jeffrey Bloom must have seen parts of Wes Craven's script or something, because there are sort of things that are in the release movie, or at least seem like they would have been influenced by it. But anyway, what did you think about reading the script?
So there were definitely some things that I liked about it. Off the top of my head, it was the little things within the script, specifically, like just one off the top of my head is like the key in the soap. That was in the Wes Craven version, which I always liked that part of the book. I just thought it was so creative. So I love that was in there. I also like that the incest part is in there, but it is problematic because they make it seem that Kathy wanted it instead of that Chris wanted it. So I have a huge issue with that.
Yeah, I get it.
I liked the scene where they have her in the hot water, but that was never in the book. And we can talk about that later a little bit with the people under the stairs. Yeah. Right. I would say in general, it just completely changed to a horror movie. With the dog, Doberman, and I'll let you kind of explain to the fans like kind of all this. But these are just like my initial reactions.
Absolutely.
I didn't care for it.
Well, I think you're right, though. I do want to say there were definitely things that were good about it. I also really
Yes.
like one thing that I enjoyed about it was the ballet took a little bit more front and center with Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished rereading it again, and it's sort of as like it's used as a tool to keep up their like motivation to survive. It's used as like we're not going to be defeated by these oppressive forces, and it's to make Kathy stronger and stronger. I did appreciate that, as well as moments like you said, like the key, all that, excellent. But yes, there were a lot that was different, and I think that fans, I get it. You get sort of the when you have a movie like the 1987 version that's released, and it's missing certain things like the incest, which yes, absolutely, 100% would have been better if it was there. I think we all can agree on that. But do we trade off all these other things
No.
just for that? Yeah, like, so here's the thing. You kind of look at this script. Wes Craven was excellent at contemporary horror, and he really made these into contemporary teens as opposed to
Yes.
Kathy, Christopher, Corinne, the grandmother from the novel. It's not really these characters, in my opinion.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
Hmm.
So I would say it's like similar to when like Kathy calls Christopher an a-hole.
Yeah,
I'm like she would never call him that.
correct. Yeah.
So there's some nuances in there which I talked to him about where
Hmm.
I'm like, but this isn't my Kathy.
Yes.
And I think what bothers us about the script as much because we've loved these books for so long.
Hmm.
We've watched the original 87, the adaptations, all these things. And to read this script that completely like changes the character. Again,
Yeah.
like I said with Kathy like initiating the incest or the sex.
Yeah.
I'm like that's not Kathy.
It's true, and I mean, there's all these little things, and I know as fans, when we look at adaptations, we want it to be as close to the book as possible, but sometimes there does need to be certain changes in order to create a sort of film cinematic experience. But there are other things that we were always going to be bothered by, and you know how we feel when you have watched with us reaction videos. We know about like name changes. I mean, one of the things right off the
Oh,
bat was
yes.
that Chapman was going to be
Drove me
their last name.
crazy.
Yeah, it was one of the first things you commented about.
I'm like Chapman, really? What is this?
Yeah, so the last name instead of Dollenganger is Chapman, and we're like, why? I mean, yeah, it's easier to say, but that's the whole point. Is that it's sort of a joke in the book that he chose that name. And yeah, on piggyback on that, there's like a scene where Christopher attacks the grandmother, and he's sort of like, "Get the f away from her," or things that Christopher would never say.
Yes.
And they do. There are times where Christopher is sort of immature in the novel and stuff, but like they're making fart jokes and just the way that they're talking. Like even Kathy, there's a scene with her mom where she's like just she's not. Kathy always used like pretty. She was pretty good with her grammar, pretty good with like how she spoke, but it was very much like a teen, like, so what? Like, or, I don't know, I forget the moment she said it exactly, but again, just the way that these characters were displayed to us, it didn't really seem like Kathy, Christopher, etc.
It was like throwing like a bunch of like different type characters almost
Yeah.
into a story that we
Hmm.
love, which I think that's where we struggled. There was a scene where they made the key or whatever, but then the grandma put like a deadbolt thing on there so they couldn't get
Yeah.
out. So that kind of like changes the story, which then makes Christopher have to go down into the chimney,
Hmm.
which I was like, what is this? And
Yeah.
then Justin then brought up that it's an homage or something towards people under the stairs.
Well, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I really think that his script, because it wasn't made, I really think that Wes Craven sort of dug this idea. Now, he's given interviews on what really inspired People Under the Stairs, but if you've read the Flowers of the Attic script, there's no way that like it was not inspired by his script for Flowers of the
100%.
Attic. We just rewatched People Under the Stairs yesterday just to make sure, just to see, and there's so many moments that are so clearly like related to what he ended up doing for People Under the Stairs. It's like he took certain ideas like incestuous family, like being up in an attic locked away, a pale girl who's sort of tortured by this older woman. He kind of took all these ideas and ended up recycling them for People Under the Stairs. And I really think that like if you want to see how his Flowers in the Attic would have come out, just watch People Under the Stairs, which, by the way, I am a huge fan of. I love People Under the Stairs. I think it's a really great movie. It's a little bit campy at times, but again, a lot of these moments you see in the script, like there's a whole sequence where Kathy is tied up in this bathtub and it's like the steam is coming up and she's being burned. That same exact sequence happens in People Under the Stairs, or the climbing in the walls, all of that. I mean, it's all really seen in People Under the Stairs.
So I will say when I read the script, for Flowers in the Attic, the Wes Craven script. The part about Kathy being in the like hot bathtub still had an impact on me because it's
Absolutely.
still horrifying. So when we watch People Under the Stairs, I did enjoy seeing that come to life. Even though it wasn't related to Flowers in the Attic at all, it still represents that type of torture. So seeing it, I was like, oh, it is just as terrible as I imagined. So I really did like that in People Under the Stairs. I know that makes me sound weird.
No, I'm smiling too. Like about the coming to life is what we're smiling about. It's like, oh, you kind of get to see what Wes Craven would have done with Flowers in the Attic in this moment, you know?
Yes.
And it is horrifying. Now, again, Virginia Andrews had ultimate like say on the script that was going to be chosen for the movie. From my understanding, she did not reject Wes Craven's script. It was the producers for being so violent. And his script really is horror-centric. Yes. And that's one of the scenes where it's amped.
The other thing I noticed in People Under the Stairs was actually related to the alternate ending of Flowers in the Attic, where there's this knife chase and all this stuff. So it was actually cool also seeing that come to fruition, but also realizing there's no way that fans would have enjoyed this as a Flowers in the Attic script.
I think so too. When it goes back to what we kind of said at the beginning, you know, the film process, I always assume like this is the writer, this script is chosen or not, you never see it again. It really seems like the producers behind the scenes of Flowers in the Attic really must have like been like, well, we really like this from the Wes Craven script, so implemented Jeffrey Bloom in this script. Now again, Jeffrey Bloom's original script, from my understanding, ended just like the novel The Kids Leave, but we've seen the original alternate ending where the grandmother comes out and she has this knife and it's this attack, and it's great because in People Under the Stairs, the scene you're referencing to, and obviously spoilers, we won't say anything horror, you know, too spoilery, but there's a scene where this pale girl is being attacked by this woman with this knife in a very like cliched horror movie scene where you have the knife chase sort of thing. But we saw it in the original alternate ending to Flowers in the Attic, the released version. They did the same thing with the grandmother. Mm-hmm. So there's somewhere along the way. And again, all the stuff with like the attic and going up on the roof and stuff, all of this happened in People Under the Stairs. It also all happened in Flowers in the Attic, the script, etc. So you see all these sort of similarities. But another thing too with the Wes Craven script that's also similar to People Under the Stairs is the whole Doberman character and the dog chase. And now it gets confusing because we're not talking about a Doberman. That's the character's name. Yeah. Who, again, in the Ultimate 87 version, you have this sort of menacing caretaker. Again, it's hard to see why. Like, they clearly took things or certain aspects that they wanted to see because I think they were marketing it for more of a traditional horror movie. Yeah. And we discussed this in our original ending discussion. The late 80s was the slasher boom. In order to compete with horror at that time, you had to have some sort of elements that were going to appeal to that audience. Absolutely. And one of them would have been a knife chase or a menacing Freddy Krueger-y type guy, which Wes Craven obviously excelled at with creating Freddy Krueger. But there's this character called Doberman, who's the caretaker, gardener, whatever, and he is clearly like ready to take these kids out. He's got these vicious dogs. All of that again is seen in People Under the Stairs.
Well, this dog is very vicious and attacks Christopher, which you're kind of just like, what is going on? Like, when you're reading the script, it just doesn't make sense. So it happens right at the beginning of the script where the kids are arriving, you know, at night, they've walked through the woods, and all of a sudden, Christopher tries to, like, creep around the front of the house. He's kind of, like, checking it out. And this dog comes out at him, attacks him. It causes a big ruckus to me, in my opinion. Yes. You know, it's the middle of the night. I'm like thinking, this just doesn't make sense for this book.
And from a horror movie perspective, you can kind of see like, I get what he's trying to do here. Yeah. You know, they want you to have these sort of jump scares. But again, reading the books, you know, it's all about the clandestine atmosphere. Yes. It's about keeping it quiet. But it's like, how would people in the house not have heard this huge thing going on? The dog is attacking. It's going. Now, again, it works well in People Under the Stairs because this exact same sequence is in there when Fool and the older thief guy, Leroy, they're sneaking into the house. So nobody's home. So it makes sense that this big dog jump scare can happen. Yes. But in Flowers in the Attic, they need to be like a secret. And again, it almost seems like everybody knows the kids. Like in Wes Craven's script is like up there. And again, the whole point of this being like, yes, the Wes Craven script does some things right. Emphasizes the ballet, gets the incest, but all these other things, which is what we're, I think, ultimately trying to say, takes away like, these. there's no way, I know you as fans and what you like to see and how close you like to see these things. I think these things would have really, people would have been more upset about than the released
Yes,
product that we
agreed,
got.
100%.
But it's fun to see come alive in The People Under the Stairs.
Yes, because it's not ruining our movie.
Correct.
In our
correct.
favorite book. But
They're good ideas.
Yes.
They just don't necessarily belong in this world.
which in the part with the dog at the beginning where, like I said, it causes a big ruckus, there's also that scene where Christopher's being chased through the house.
Oh yeah,
And I'm
at the
like,
Christmas party
how
thing, yeah.
is like nobody
Right.
like knowing this is happening? Like, I'll let you describe it a little better.
Sure, okay.
But like, I'm just like, this would never happen.
Well, feel free to respond, because one thing I don't want to skip over, which is from the beginning scene to this scene, is the character of the grandmother. And this is what I'm talking about. We're going to trade off having the incest for these not being these characters. And this is not the
Yes.
grandmother. The grandmother right away is sort of like pissed, for lack of a better word, that she was like, this is what you get for going around to the front of the house when the dogs attack. She's like, too bad.
Mhm.
And the thing that's reoccurring with the grandmother is that, like, the big difference is Olivia never wanted the kids dead.
Correct.
I don't know exactly what her real ultimate goal was, to just have them be up there forever, I guess. I know that's what kind of was suggested the grandfather wanted. But Olivia was very clear that Corinne is the one that poisoned the kids. I think with her religion and everything, I don't think she would, murder's the biggest sin. No matter what a hypocrite she was, murder was never on it. This grandmother in this script is not playing around.
Yeah.
She wants those kids dead, and she just wants an excuse to do it.
Yes.
She's waiting for an excuse. So what happens is you have that opening scene where, not the opening scene, everything other than the name Chapman is pretty close to how things are set up in the book, the movie, everything. They get there, you have this kerfuffle with the dog, Doberman the character, and the grandmother's clearly pissed. Well, when they're at the Christmas party, Kathy and Chris sneak out, and the grandmother, or Corinne does not let them out. They sneak out, and they're at the Christmas party. Christopher decides to continue on and explore, just like he does in the novel, but wearing his disguise, and it sort of snowballs into Corinne kind of sees him and is like pissed. She calls him a little bastard at one point. Like, again, I just don't see Corinne doing this. The character of Corinne, too, she seems like she hates her kids more obviously sooner than you get, like, in the book and the movie. But so there's this big chase sequence, huge thing going on. They're running around. Doberman is, like, ready to kill Christopher. And it basically, the grandmother, Christopher runs to the room. The grandmother's coming out, which is going to lead to another moment. But, like, it's sort of like this threat of, like, don't get him this time, but if he does it again, we're going to get him, sort of thing.
Thank you for describing that. But again, with the running around, Doberman's chasing Chris through the house, like at a Christmas party, like
right.
Absolutely everybody at that party would have heard a ruckus. And like you said earlier, it's like everybody knew about the kids. So It takes away from the whole premise of the flowers in the attic where the kids aren't to be seen or heard or know that they exist.
Oh, and I want to make a comment to people out there who have read the Wes Craven script. We're not saying literally that everybody knew about the kids, but it seems like more people did know about the kids than you would expect at this point. Anyway, there are fun horror movie moments, and it does lead to this scene, which has Kathy in the bathtub, and again, because this, like, it was fun in the movie where you have Louise Fletcher kind of. Hey, please let us all qualify when we say things like this are fun. We don't think they're fun. We're talking about from an entertainment perspective. But it's fun when sort of Kathy gets smacked and you have the grandmother with the scissors like, you are a sinner, and it's that sort of view. This is definitely more, again, if you want to see what the grandmother would have been like, watch People Under the Stairs and the character known as the woman. So the grandmother in this has like tied Kathy up over the bathtub and is like scalding her. Well, this happens in People Under the Stairs. So again, it's pretty cool. You can see how it would have come to life because Wes Craven ended up getting to use these ideas. And again, People Under the Stairs, it's about a pale girl locked away, the whole religion thing. These people are very religious. Hear no evil, see no evil. Everything's about this. They're a brother and sister, though, and it kind of takes the evil angle that way, and how they're criminals, greed, money. Yes, exactly. So it's all there. It just seems like he kind of twisted it up a little bit to kind of give us that. But again, I just don't see the grandmother. ever doing anything
No.
that she does in Wes Craven's story. And again, the characters, Christopher and Kathy, the way they talk, I mean, it's almost borderline slang. It's very contemporary to the teens of that time, and that was something Wes Craven was always good at, or identifying sort of the vernacular of the teenage audience, which was what would be appealing for a horror movie audience at that time. But it's not our Kathy and Christopher. And you have like the whole, let's speak about the incest scene then. It happens after a whipping. Now, I do think one of the issues with the 87 film and why I think the incest was omitted was because of the time frame they were up there. They were only up there for about a year. And that's the same in the Wes Craven script, but he does do it in a way, whereas the 87 movie, it would have been hard to see how they turned to incest so quickly. You kind of can see it in this one because it comes right off of this whipping that they're traumatized now. They're reaching out to each other. Christopher, after the whole scalding thing, really helped Kathy with the ballet, which was great. It made the ballet front and center. But it's sort of a tender moment where Kathy and Christopher embrace under the sheet. So you're not really seeing the incest. And I will say that was one thing that was once we saw it on the Lifetime versions, we were all waiting for it for years. We were all like, oh, we get it. It's no big deal. For me personally, I mean, I'm not a prude, but like it was hard to see it sometimes where I was sort of like, oh, I'm uncomfortable a little bit here. And I think that Wes Craven solved that problem because you don't actually see it in his script. You see the aftermath, the before, she pulls the sheet over them. So you never actually see it, so it kind of omits that like ick factor because you know it's there, but you're not seeing it. And that's the genius of Wes Craven. I think there was stuff that was really great about him. But again, you have then it leading to this sort of off the wall ending where they're like climbing through the walls, like in People Under the Stairs, going through this chimney to sort of attack the mom sort of thing, get away. Just like People Under the Stairs. They end up on this roof at one point, just like People Under the Stairs. Again, it's all stuff that you ultimately see. And I think that's great. But I personally really like, I'm such a big fan of the 87 movie. And the big thing is character development and the characters, the atmosphere. I think the 87 movie does really capture that, even better than the Lifetime movies. Now, the Lifetime movies definitely had the story closer to it, and that was great, but it was almost like documentary or sanitized, whereas the 87 movie creates this mood, this atmosphere.
Well, so we always talk about the music
in
the 87, which at the beginning of People Under the Stairs, I did have a thought that the music sounded similar to the 87 Flowers in the Attic, and then it kind of changed a little bit throughout the movie, but I remember as soon as People Under the Stairs started, I was like, ooh, that music does kind of remind me of the 87.
Yeah. And it's stuff like that like creates it. And maybe he would have, done that. But the Lifetime movies really didn't. The 87 movie does really get that fairy tale quality in it. The dark Southern Gothic fairy tale. And the character development and that stuff that I'm sorry, I think the Wes Craven script really was missing. And the biggest moment for me about this, and I just realized this right before we were filming, I'm like, the thing I missed or that was not in the Wes Craven script was the Corinne versus Kathy moment.
Yes.
That is my favorite moment in maybe all of cinema. Well, one of my top 3 moments in all of cinematic history is the Corinne, always it's you, smacks Kathy, she smacks her back. Damn you to hell, mama. That scene is just so powerful. It's no wonder Kristy Swanson won the Youth Artist Award for it. I mean, it's a great moment. That's missing in this, and that's because the sort of confrontation goes to Christopher in the script.
It does. Yeah, with Kathy, that's what I'm saying. Like, Kathy's character, she's not there. In the Wes Craven script. That's the parts of Kathy that we love, is her anger and her passion and, like, all that. You don't really see it too much in the Wes Craven script. But as we get closer to the end of the script, the Wes Craven script, it even gets kind of campy, as you'd like to call it.
Over the top.
Over the top, where I'm just like, I can't accept this ending at all. Like, I could barely accept the 87 film's ending, but this would have been like, no way. I'll let you describe it because he's better at that.
Well, I'll say too about the released version versus the alternate ending from the one we got, the 87 movie. Seeing as they're like, yes, I wish that like they had ended it more faithfully and we had gotten a Petals on the Wind sequel. Like we discussed in our last Petals on the Wind episode, I still want to read what they would have done as a sequel to the 87 movie, considering where they left everybody. But like, I will say I've come to really embrace either ending to 87 Flowers in the Attic because there was never a sequel. Correct. So at least we have it's a standalone movie, if you will. This one is so over the top. I don't know where where anything lands. And it's still, I finished rereading it again today, and the way it ends is just so abruptly. But it basically starts as this like sort of domino effect of like the grandmother has like really locked the kids up there now. Like they have the key, but they can't get out because it's like stuck the door.
Yeah.
And Christopher's all like, "Oh, you want to play? Let's play." And I'm like, "Okay, Christopher." Like, who is this Christopher? He goes up in the attic. He's been like digging at this chimney that conveniently leads down to Corinne's room. Which again, when I was first reading this, I was like, "This reminds me of the people under the stairs." So he goes down this chimney. Corinne sees it. He then falls all the way down to the library where he discovers the grandfather's gone. Meanwhile, Kathy is up in the attic or like the room attic with Carrie. Corey has just died. The mouse has just died. We like don't have any sort of resolution with that because all of a sudden Doberman has been given permission by the grandmother to go ahead get rid of them now. Just get rid of the kids. It's so like the grandmother would never do this, but so Doberman is attacking Kathy and Carrie, who are scrambling up on the roof. Christopher is meanwhile in the library, getting everything revealed to him by I guess a butler, but it doesn't seem like John Amos.
It's not. It's
So he's getting told by this guy, like, hey, the grandfather's been dead, and the grandmother and mother are cuckoo birds, and like all this stuff, and you're like, what? So meanwhile, it keeps kind of flashing back and forth. The wedding's getting going, but like the priest, he sees Kathy and Carrie up on a roof with Doberman clearly doing this in front of everybody. Nobody, like, the grandmother was like, oh, that's fine, just kill them in front of all the guests. I mean, like what? And and then she's sort of like, Corinne's almost seeing them or something, and then Christopher steps in and he's like, mother, just like Kathy does in the 87 version, but it's meant to be Kathy who does this stuff. Christopher's like, hey, I'm her kid. Kathy, meanwhile, so she's being attacked by Doberman because Corinne's like, I don't have any kids, I don't have any kids. So Christopher's like, that's my mother. And from up on the roof, even though she's being attacked, Kathy has time to be like, we are Corinne's kids. Like, she can hear what's going on down there. Like, it's like, what? And so, she ends up attacking Doberman with this antenna. Lightning rod, something. He falls over and kills the grandmother. And you're sort of like,
right
what?
On her.
Right. And it's so, yes, for a horror movie, sure. For an original idea, sure. But are you telling me out there that you all would have rather had, like, that would have given you VC Andrews fans pleasure and being like, oh, this was a great adaptation? Like, if, like, the movie we have, which I think is so faithful, other than it takes place over a year and they omit the incest, so much else is in the spirit, the essence of the 87 movie. I just find it really hard to believe that, like, just because there's incest in there and a little bit more ballet, we're willing to trade all that off for this over-the-top, grandmother's killed ending because Doberman falls on her.
I wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah.
And I actually watched the 87 movie before I read the book, so I don't know if I would have read the book if I watched the Wes Craven
good point,
script. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I think though there are items from it that are very good and stuff that I really enjoyed. But do I think it would have been the better movie? Not necessarily. I'm glad that we get to see it. I feel like sometimes things are just meant to happen the way they are. I think Jeffrey Bloom's script was meant to get filmed, and I think, like, yeah, the release product was not what was intended from him, but because of all that happened with Wes Craven was then able to go make People Under the Stairs. His ideas really worked well for People Under the Stairs. I think, like I said, that's one of my favorite movies. Like, I've loved that movie since it came out. We saw it way too young, but it works. It works for that movie. I just really don't think it would have worked for Flowers in the Attic and VC Andrews fans.
But I did like seeing some of that come into People Under the Stairs.
Yes,
I think it's like we get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
But honestly, if that had been the script and the movie that we had gotten, I don't even know if that would have kept me reading or even wanting to read. I'm not as big of a horror fan as he is, so it would have been a little harder for me. But if I eventually probably read the book, I would have been like, wait a minute, this isn't even close to what we saw. And I probably still would have read them because I do love the book. It's my favorite. So.
I am a big horror fan, and I love the idea of, like, okay, we have the released 87 film, so I love seeing another take on it that wasn't released. So I love the Wes Craven script for that. The horror fan in me loves it. But if that was the actual film, I don't know. And again, I get like wanting the natural impulse to make Flowers in the Attic into a horror movie. At that time, the late 80s, it was the slasher boom that, in order to compete, it had to sort of go that route. But in terms of when, like I said, from the 90s, people were always like, this is the way they should have gone. This was way better. I don't really think that's the case. I
No.
think that like what we got was actually better. And honestly, with all of it, that how everything played out, I would have loved to have had a sequel with Kristy Swanson, Louise Fletcher, everybody coming back, doing it, making it faithful, two pedals on the wind. But since that's not the world we got, I love that we got the 1987 movie. I love that we have the alternate ending now. It was such a thrill for me when we
Yeah.
when we got that. It's a thrill for me to get to see this script, and it's interesting too because the Deadly Friend, another Wes Craven movie, was made in 1986, starring Kristy Swanson. So it's always weird these little things that like. Even though Wes Craven didn't get to make Flowers in the Attic, he still got to work with Kristy Swanson. And who knows if Kristy Swanson would have been able to have been in Flowers in the Attic because
Right, true.
he wouldn't have been making Deadly Friend or vice versa. So like things are sometimes just meant to happen.
And she's the perfect Kathy.
She is the perfect Kathy, and I think, like I said, the moment I live for is that confrontation
Yes.
scene that would not have been in this Wes Craven script, and it's one of the reasons why I love Kristy Swanson so much is her performance in that.
Absolutely. I agree.
And again, it just comes down to like certain problems though with the Wes Craven script. Like for me, the character development, like for instance, the grandmother decides at the Christmas party, like we were discussing, not to let Doberman kill Christopher or the kids. But why not? Because it seems like that was the ultimate plan.
Right.
Like what was any motivation to keep them alive? Based on this script, it really doesn't make sense. From the beginning, all she's looking for is a reason to kill. But meanwhile, Corinne is giving them poison right from the beginning, arsenic, to be killed. So in that moment, it would have been a perfect reason to have just got rid of Christopher. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. But on the flip side, there's a lot he did right. The ballet dancing, there's the scene where they go to the lake.
Yes.
That's all there and it's great. So I think that there's reasons to love the Wes Craven script, but ultimately, would it have been the better way to go? You don't think so? I don't think so. But what do you all think? Have you read the Wes Craven script? Would you have rather had that be the movie that we got? Are you fans of the 87 movie? As always, I look forward to hearing all the discussions below. But I have to say, I'm glad the Wes Craven script is out there, but I am also glad it's not the movie that we got. And I really do love Wes Craven.
You do.
Yeah.
Again, there were elements of the Wes Craven script that I did enjoy, but ultimately that's not the movie that I would have wanted. It wasn't even close to the book. It didn't represent. The characters didn't seem right. Just the whole thing.
But again, you get it. What do you all think? As usual, thanks for watching 411 Pop Culture. We're real people talking about really everything. We'll talk to you soon. John Amos